I watched it. It took over on, at least on Dish, the old H2 channel. It's now Viceland 121, and they had an entire show on the states that's legalized marijuana.
Washington, Oregon,
I saw
Colorado.
They showed how they're using it to treat different medical ailments.
Yeah,
With
kids,
the
little kids,
oil.
kids who are suffering from hundreds of seizures a day, one
Yep.
drop of
The oil.
and
One guy actually tested to see how much one drop of oil was. And he, that one drop of oil, he was still, they said equivalent of 3 ounces of marijuana. That little vial was 3 ounces of marijuana.
Oh, wow.
That one drop was about 5 or 6 joints worth of marijuana.
Man, you rolled some fat joints.
Well, I saw the other day that one of these congressmen from, I think it was Louisiana or something, was talking about like, well, what if somebody buys it there and then takes it into Louisiana and everything, and then they have to be treated in their hospital, and that costs them money. And the guy from Colorado, I loved his response. He was like, look, you guys eat fatty foods, then go all over our state, and we have to treat you guys. That's heart disease is the #1 cause of, and he's like, so don't give me this crap of what ifs, like this is, it's just made up nonsense that you're trying to come up with. So.
All right, let's dive in. I don't have quite as much today, so we might get out a few early. So I don't have the exams graded yet. I tried, but no, I looked through the multiple choice. Like a couple people did really, really good, and then most of the rest of you weren't that bad. So
the rest of you. So we all did horrible, but Damon did good.
Yeah.
Right.
Good job, Damon.
I don't know what you guys think. Like, it was a lot of questions for the time, right?
Yeah.
It would have been better if we had like.
I was gonna say the multiple choice ones. I was amazed at how many that I went through and just went, "Oh, I remember that." And actually went through them.
Well, that's what I was hoping, because I tried to pick ones that like were straight off of things we really talked about, and some of them, veer a little bit
at the same
to
time,
the fringe of that.
Like, I knew I could have looked up all of them, but I didn't want to.
Well, then you never would have made it in
It felt
time.
so
anyway.
wrong.
Yeah.
Like looking at my book and stuff. I was just like,
That's the hard thing. If I'm gonna make it open book, I got to do a ton of questions, so you can't look every single one up. But
because you're really fast.
Well, and I haven't opened that book up since, so I don't want to do it. No,
the way to go would have been to use the PDF and Control F and right.
Nobody did that.
Yeah, that's how I would have done it. So
No clue what you're talking about.
Yeah, I don't. What is this control?
Yeah, maybe I should just took all your PDFs, combined it, make it one huge document, and just did that.
So I'll get that scored, and then I'll scale it around a little bit. I'll probably throw out a couple questions because
Just dump the highest test score and curve it from there.
there you go.
I might do that, yeah. But I mean, somebody missed, I think, 2 or 3 questions.
Yeah, Damon.
It might not have been Damon.
It was Damon. Don't lie.
Might have been, it might not have been.
We all know.
I think 2 people missed 2 or 3
Okay, then
questions.
drop the highest too.
Okay, now I know. I want to know who it is now.
Damon won.
This is
Yeah.
FERPA violation.
It's okay, I can talk to him unless again.
We won't tell anybody. Go ahead.
Yeah, except it's being recorded for YouTube. So if it wasn't for that, then maybe, we'd be less worried.
You're
about it.
incriminating yourself. You're on YouTube right now.
So I always run the statistics in Moodle, and it tells me which questions aren't valid because too many people missed them or they weren't good indicators. I usually don't. The correct way would be to throw those out and scale the points. I usually just give you that many more points, which is the nicer way to do it. So today we're going to talk about agile programming and really agile methodologies. I usually look at it more from the development side, but it really is a whole encompassing thing. And then kind of the way we'll structure the rest. I mean, we have 9 weeks, except I think 1 spring break. And then the week of March 20-something, 21st, like 3 weeks, I'll be gone Monday and Wednesday.
Go ahead and do
So-
that again.
Oh, no class on my birthday.
Yeah, we won't have.
Monday and Wednesday.
I'm gonna say
Wednesday.
we're here Tuesday,
Tuesday.
Thursday.
Yeah, we're here Tuesday and Thursday.
Oh.
Yeah, so I'll be gone.
Monday, Wednesday. but you'll
I'll be gone
there.
Monday through Wednesday.
Oh,
I'll actually be gone the previous Friday through Wednesday
Okay.
at a Project Lead the Way conference. So we'll miss Tuesday that week, but I'll post that on there so that you guys know. I think spring break, do we have 15 weeks counting spring break in the semester or 15 weeks?
counting.
I think it's counting.
So this semester has one less week of I guess it's because of there's more days off in the fall. There's almost a whole week off for Thanksgiving, and then there's Labor Day, and I think it adds up to the same number of days, even though we're down a whole week.
Gotta have all the nonsense holidays.
Yeah.
I know.
I mean, it's nice to have, like when I had my company, there was no such thing as holidays other than maybe Christmas and Thanksgiving. So I worked
Problem is-
every holiday.
When Thanksgiving rolls around, I actually have to socialize, which is terrible.
Yeah.
So
See, the problem is they always line up spring break to be like right the day before a good game comes out. Both semesters.
That's a good thing.
Dark Souls 3 comes out the day after spring break.
Oh, it's after spring break.
I'm
Oh,
going to Sun and Fun for the fly-in. So in Florida,
oh yeah.
first year it's ever landed on our spring break. I'm flying down there. So.
Nice. I'm going to Calgary with the robotics team. So
Nice.
taking 24 high school boys to
Showing your true,
Calgary.
showing your true nerd colors.
Yes. So the way the rest of this, I'm not going to be lecturing for an hour and 20 minutes very often for the rest of the semester. I'll come in, what we're working on for homework, that part of the class, that week, I'll talk about stuff relevant to that. Some of it will be, kind of reminders of things from before, but mostly new stuff. Homework assignments will be moving us towards the project goal. So homework 4, I don't have it done yet, but that'll be out sometime.
We can look for it, but we won't find it.
Yeah, you can look for it, but you might not find it. I want to get it out before next Tuesday. I'd like to have it out by Monday at the latest, but that'll be starting to formalize an actual proposal, and then we'll be moving into requirements, design. I'm going to try to pencil out a schedule that's like this week is this week is this, so that we can kind of, otherwise you just kind of move forward and then get to the end and you're like, wait, I'm out of weeks. So it's hard. I mean, it's hard to predict these things though, being the first time through this. So what we're shooting for at the end is you have a prototype of whatever you proposed. I gave feedback on everyone's projects on Moodle. This next part will just be to kind of more formally present those. But by the end of the semester, you'll have some kind of prototype at varying levels of completion. Some people will probably have a ton and some people won't. I mean, we have one of the people that takes the online is like a really good software developer, really experienced. So he'll have something.
So that's the other
And then we'll know that I'm not even counting Damon, someone even more experienced than
You hear
Damon.
that?
So
You don't count.
no, I wasn't talking about Damon, who I was referring to. So, I mean, we're not held against standards against each other, obviously. Some will do more than others, but you will all do a presentation, and that's instead of a final. Now, I talked about it way before, but our final is like scheduled for Monday. I won't be here because then I will be in Disneyland. So,
Are you literally going to Disneyland?
Every
yeah,
year.
this is my 3rd time this year.
Dude, I grew up in Florida around Disney World, and I never go to Disney World ever again. I hate Disney.
My wife
That
loves
is
it so
On my
much.
bucket list is to go.
Well,
Yeah,
when you
I-
get there, make sure to go to medieval times, the place to dinner.
Yeah,
Best-
I went in Florida long, like in 8th
Yeah.
grade, but
Best time to go to Disney World is the gay and lesbian pride days.
oh yeah.
So the week, nobody's there. I mean, apparently everyone's so homophobic that just nobody shows up. No lines, no waiting. Best time ever. Everyone's nice.
Everyone's
Nobody's
happy.
crying. There's no kids.
The
Perfect.
so I went last May, I went last October, and then now I'm going in May again. So like basically 3 times within like 1 year period. But
Nice.
the when you hit the days that aren't blacked out for the people that live there,
Yeah.
and like the new thing, and they probably have this in Florida too, but in Disneyland, I call them pin gangs. They're people that are pin trading, and they get these elaborate biker vests with like biker patches, and then they're just covered with Disney pins, and
Yeah, I know.
they're trading them, but they look like biker gangs. They look like some sketchier dudes and stuff, but they're like actually not. But there are a lot of them are these big dudes wearing these pins everywhere and,
Yeah,
and trading them.
I've seen that biker gang. You know, it's like, dude, check out the Tweety Bird.
Yeah, and that has become huge the last few years
Yeah.
in Disneyland. It's interesting.
I was gonna say, I know the people you're talking about because I've seen people like wearing that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
I
looked it up
big in Florida.
online and I read all about it because I was like, what is this? Like, what's going on here, you know? So, I mean, I collect the pins a little bit, but I don't have like
I hate pins.
a denim vest covered in them because that's usually their denim vests. When
And when
custom
we lived down
patches.
there, we would never go to Disney World. We'd just go to the water parks and stuff because they were a quarter of the price,
Yeah.
and there was nobody ever there, and it was Florida, so it was hot. So
I've been to Disney World twice.
Yeah.
I mean,
Blizzard Beach and Typhoon Lagoon.
I didn't
too.
go to those, which I wish we
Yeah.
had, but
They're pretty baller.
yeah, I've heard that they're pretty good. So.
Yeah.
Straight
So,
up.
the content for what I'm going to talk about, or at least some of it, comes out of Appendix B of your book. So, Appendix A is about object-oriented design and stuff. I don't really want to. You guys, if you take Java, you've talked about that, I hope, and
About what?
object-oriented design.
What's that?
I didn't think they would have that in this book.
Well, it's extending that beyond like writing code, but to like a bigger idea of
Okay.
system design.
Well, I
I
mean,
don't
because
know,
it's
just-
just so like business
business.
oriented.
It's a
I
business
just wasn't
book.
expecting to have any kind of.
I mean, I think we've gotten a lot of good stuff out of this book. In future years, I probably will look for a more
Updated.
techie and updated book than this, but I mean, there's a lot of good stuff in it. So we're going to define agile methodologies. And like I said, I put agile programming at the beginning just because I'm always thinking about programming, but really it involves the design and the requirements and all that stuff. When to use agile methodologies versus engineering based. That's kind of what they're defining. All the other stuff we talked about as being more engineering based. They never talked about it as being engineering based until this chapter, but
With a capital X.
yeah, and usually you see this as XP is how I'm used to seeing it.
Like Windows?
Yeah, like Windows. We'll define that, and then we'll go through an example of how you'd use extreme programming to go through the phases of the software development lifecycle. Being aware that Agile is the methodology. Within it, there's a lot of techniques to be Agile. Extreme programming is one. Lean is one. Kanban is one. Scrum is one. There's techniques you use to be Agile, basically, is what it boils down to. So, the move towards Agile methodologies. So the idea is that we've started to move away from the traditional methods. Now, this book is 8 years old or whatever. I think we've moved even significantly more towards Agile in that time period. I pulled and looked at some of the materials from the 6th edition of the book, thinking maybe they had updated some of that. It's like almost exactly the same. So,
Reason the fifth edition
because
of the book?
supposedly there was used copies and it would be cheaper. But I don't think anyone got used copies from the bookstore, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you did get
They're all
used?
used.
But were they cheaper?
I don't know.
By
It
about
happened
5, 10
before.
Yeah, see, okay. I mean, I just didn't save as much as it should have.
I
But
bought mine off Amazon. It was like $13, I think.
I had mine downloaded originally.
yeah,
I
most.
don't know. I can tell you how much it was.
That's the thing about Amazon is the out of older editions go way down and they
Yeah.
don't always here in the bookstore.
Yeah.
Usually the regular prices on the bookstore are pretty competitive with Amazon. And
Well, and the thing that really kills me about the bookstore, especially on the other campus, is I bought books there, and the used ones are usually beat up pretty well.
Yeah.
And I've had some that were missing a couple pages and that kind of thing, and yeah, they're like $25, $30 cheaper than a new book, and it's like you can get them off of Amazon. They're $80 cheaper
Yeah.
than a new book, and they're in better shape.
You know,
It's like
people are always pretty hard on the bookstore. It is a nonprofit, and all of their profits go towards student scholarships. So, like, knowing that, I felt like more likely to support them than I don't know what they're doing out there.
Can I just stare at them?
Oh, I think they're touring high school kids.
High school
Is
kid.
what it is.
you should walk out there with your voice and just be like, "Be
They're all like,
quiet."
they're we all weird.
They're like, that's what people look like here. I'm not going there. They're like, I can't go to that guy's class. I'll just fall asleep. Low voice.
His beautiful
They all think
voice.
They've just seen a ghost. So like,
Yeah, I know they're really creeped out when we look at them because every time I've made eye contact with them, they're
Oh,
like,
God.
yeah.
Oh, my God.
So I get back to what I was talking about. I think I don't know if I'd say a majority of software is developed using Agile, but a lot of cloud-based stuff, especially.
What
So
up, G? What's
the
up?
book breaks down.
He just looked at me. He's like,
For those of you on the YouTube, there's a bunch of high school kids standing outside the door,
and Austin can't refuse.
looking through the window, and we're looking at them, and it's kind of like freaking them out. But so 3 phases of system analysis. So I don't know. The book kind of does this. The idea is at first like the developer was an artist, and it was an undisciplined profession. You didn't really document. The developer themselves kind of did all the maintenance. Then we moved into the phase of a developer as an
Now there's a
engineer.
bunch of stoned ones just staring at me.
Yeah, probably. So engineer process has more documentation, rigorous testing, structured tools, computer-based. That's basically what we've talked about for 5 weeks, is this engineering approach. And it's always been kind of a contentious thing within, like I would call myself a software engineer, but to have an engineer certification, all other engineering fields, you have to be certified to operate as an engineer within that state, except a software engineer, unless you work in Texas. Texas requires an engineer's license to operate as a software engineer.
I mean, really, what is the difference between a software engineer and a software developer or programmer? I mean,
An engineer, I mean, if I had to say why I would call myself a software engineer than a programmer is, and really, it's that you're trained more in the design of the software and the methodologies to go about that rather than just writing code.
so you're more well-rounded and not just a code monkey.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I would consider, like, if you're a software engineer, you're above just a standard programmer.
Yeah.
Like, as a title. And my thesis for my master's was a software engineering thesis. Like, so yeah, I would call myself a software engineer. It's been kind of a thing in the last 15 years. So should software engineering move towards being more of an engineering field where you get your degree and you have to pass a certification? It hasn't really, there was a movement towards that for a while. It,
Well, I mean,
it has just kind of gone away.
technically, when you look at like the requirements for the degrees, computer science, you got to take almost the identical
Right.
math classes.
It's
and,
just
you
as
know,
rigorous as an engineering degree.
Yeah, exactly. It's not.
The only difference is, if an engineer moves to another state and they want to operate there, they've got to pass that state's certification, and we can go wherever we want. But it makes sense. I mean, you can work from.
I was gonna say, yeah, you can work
I
from
don't know.
Montana and be working for a company in Florida or something.
So the newest is this move towards agile methodologies. So object-oriented approach. You're sort of sacrificing milestones. You're not as have all these as hard of delivery dates because it's more of a continual cycle, especially with cloud stuff. A lot more cooperation with the developers and clients. You're basically taking a whole bunch of phases and kind of crushing them together and then doing it over and over again. There's different techniques to do that, but they all share a lot of these ideas. And then multiple rapid releases. So, I mean, the trade-off to some of this is that, as we've seen, almost everything comes out now and is in beta, basically, because it's broke, and then then they're releasing it to fix it. So, depending on the type of software, do you think NASA uses agile methodologies? Probably not. There are still some areas of development where it's like, you can't launch the rocket and hope the code works and then fix it.
Well,
as it
they
goes.
did that and crashed the thing into Mars. So,
Well, yeah.
I mean,
Well, that was because they used
metric and
and
standard.
standard. So.
But then again, they never tested it to make
Right.
sure it was going to work. So
Though Agile has taken, kind of a hold of most projects, there's still places where you're going to do a traditional methods would be specifically waterfall method, the spiral method. Waterfall is the big one. It's just
You waterfall into a spiral?
good. So, and I already kind of said this, agile methodologies, you have a bunch of different specific ones. They talk about the crystal family of methodologies. I had never heard of that. I Googled it and looked at it.
You got some interesting pictures.
It sounds weird, crystal family.
of methodology.
Yeah,
I
especially
guarantee you-
crystal family of methodologies.
Yeah.
I don't know, it just sounds weird. But
Yeah.
There are planes in you.
So you can Google it if you want. I mean, it's kind of a dated agile methodology. Adaptive software development, which is ASD, which again, I don't really know much about. It was one of the early ones that's kind of given way to the more modern Scrum. Feature-driven development, I mean, that's FDD, I guess. I don't really aren't as familiar with that. Scrum and extreme programming, and then I would add Kanban. As we saw with the software tools, Kanban was pretty common in a lot of them. What was the name of yours? Zoho. I'm kind of leaning towards Zoho. I mean,
really nice.
You thought it was really good. I've liked it. I'm gonna do some more testing because I'm gonna push us all into one. It'll just be easier than.
They stopped sending me emails too.
Okay. Some of the other ones look pretty good, but either had missing features that I think would be useful or didn't have good free versions. Wasn't yours one that had a lot of stuff behind the paywall?
Exactly. I mean, the trial, it wouldn't do half the stuff that it said it would do on the website because you had to pay for it, which I thought was kind of weird. Why would you give a trial away if you can't do half the stuff on it? It's that's the point to try.
Yeah, what I want, what my preference for trials is that they're fully featured. It's just they only allow 2 team members or something. So it's you couldn't use it on a real big project.
You can't print something, or you can't save stuff, or you can't. Yeah, I mean, there's limitations on it. But
the only thing they really limited was you couldn't use the bug testing feature. And there was a couple little things, but.
And I'll just have to verify that whatever I choose can do it. I'll want it to be able to have you and then me, so you can add me as a person, so I can just log in and view your projects. Okay. Because I'd like to be able to do our requirements and do, a schedule, even though it's so compressed, it's kind of a little unrealistic, but just so we can kind of do miniature versions of all those things. So I had already posted this link way earlier in the semester, but about the Agile Manifesto. We looked at that weird page that looks like it was developed in 1990. But it came out in 2001, so it can't be that old. But Agile was very new when I went through my computer science degree. We talked a lot about extreme programming and that kind of thing. But as a defined methodology, 2001, I mean, I graduated in 2005, so it was new.
High school or from college?
From college. Well, my first of 4 times I graduated from college. So the key principles, though, that Scrum, Kanban, Lean all use are kind of fit into these. So you want to be adaptive rather than predictive. So you're not imagining what you think the users want. You're working with the users. So like we keep talking about, not Windows 8, Windows 10. That was sort of the shift. Microsoft thought No one's telling us they want this, but if we put it out there, they're gonna love it. And it didn't really happen that way.
I don't know if it was more of that or if it was just, hey, we got to get something out for tablets because we're going to
Well,
get from this.
that too.
Yeah, instead of doing any research on it, they just went, this will work.
But at some point, for big movements to happen, somebody does have to say, we think people will like this, at least to go far enough to get the users to say they do. So,
well, I think they went off a lot of like feedback from Windows Phone users.
Yeah.
Because that's what it was really modeled after.
Exactly.
Was, like, the tiles
You know,
and
but
that.
I've never met anybody who's like, yeah, dude, I love my Windows phone. They're like, oh yeah, I have a Windows phone.
I love mine. I'll be the first one. I love my Windows Phone. I will.
I've never
I don't
had
use
one,
it, but I love it.
most people I've talked to got them because they got some kind of cheap deal.
Well, I bought it because I like the interface stuff. There's just nothing on them. There's no apps. That's the problem with
it.
it.
Go back to Droid on
Yeah, I
my
got
phone.
like a hookup with my Xbox. I was like, oh, you
All
mean like this
Droid.
app?
Yeah, I was like, yeah,
It's
all
like,
Droid. Actually, Android connects right into your Xbox. Yeah.
Well, and now Microsoft has an Outlook app on the Android, which works great, that I can connect to the Exchange server here and at the school. And I don't know, like, they've kind of realized like they've got to just support what's out there and get people on their products.
Well, and alienating Google products was not going to work for them. I mean,
so the second principle, we're focusing on people rather than roles. So it's a little less of a structured organizational idea. And then self-adaptive. I mean, here adaptive is being used again, right? It's agile because it can move quickly depending on what happens, what requirements change. So here's just a big what the manifesto kind of is, and it's like 7 anarchists agree, and at the bottom it has the list of the anarchists. My favorite, who is actually the guy that made the crystal methodologies before, is Alistair Cockburn. I just think that's a funny name. So yeah.
How old are you?
I'm old, but that's still funny to me.
Teaches high school, so.
Now, of course, every name on here is a man, so that's kind of the nature of the industry. So, okay. So,
Are all of these on YouTube?
Yes.
Because I think we could start a channel and just have people.
they're all out there. Yeah. I haven't looked at what the views are. Maybe it's gone viral and I didn't even know it.
They're trying to track you.
I should have put that check that I could make revenue off of them when I created the channel.
See, you missed your opportunity right there.
Yep. So we can, I mean, you can read through these, but our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery. Welcome changing requirements even late in development. So that's a big thing. Not they're fixed. You didn't ask for this a year ago, even though you want it now. Too bad. That phase is over. It's not happening. That would be the traditional way. So, et cetera, et cetera. So the reason to come up with this whole Agile is because software engineering was designed after engineering fields. Engineering fields have been around for a long time. So it kind of made sense. Well, if we're going to develop software, that's like developing a bridge. So let's take those ideas and adapt them to software. But they don't really fit well. Engineering requirements are well understood. Software requirements often are not. If you're going to design a bridge, you know what the requirements are. It's this long, it's this wide, it needs to hold this much weight. I mean, they're set. There's some different ways. There's hundreds of different ways you could build the bridge to meet those requirements, but you know what the requirements are. They're very specific. In software, the requirements are, no one ever knows what they want. There's too much variation. Just like we've seen, looked at 10 different project management softwares, and they would not even come close to having the same requirement list because no one could agree, like, this is what project management software has to have. People can agree what a bridge has to have. Maybe not on aesthetics, but on function.
You need to be able to drive across it without falling down.
Right. In an engineering project design, I mean, you can sit down and design the bridge pretty quick, and then it's a long time of building it. in software engineering, you might spend 50% just on design. You might spend less. It just depends, but there's more design required is kind of the key there. So agile methodologies embrace change and deal with lack of predictability. So an iterative process, trying to continually loop around so that you go through mini cycles. Mini, I was thinking of the word mini, M-I-N-I, like miniature versions. You could also say many, that you're going through a whole bunch of those. So they sound the same when I say them, though. Focus on individuals, an adaptive process so you can refine it and improve it. That's another big thing, is you learn from the process in Agile and make it better. You don't just, well, this is the way we do it, and it doesn't matter how good that works, we're doing it that way. You refine that process. So where does Agile fit well? Unpredictable or dynamic requirements. Projects that have responsible and motivated developers, though, I mean, that kind of applies to every methodology, right? But
I hope that you had responsible and motivated developers on any methodology.
customers who understand and will get involved. So this is where if you look at a cloud-based system, they kind of, other than the developer part, which is sort of just a weird aside, they fit that, right? The requirements are dynamic. The customers, by nature of using it, kind of just know that's the deal, and they'll give feedback and be able to get what they wanted. This was the key with Orbital Shift. The requirements were definitely dynamic. I guess I was responsible and motivated, and then getting the customers involved and behind it was the big thing. So when is the engineering approach recommended? Bigger projects, projects involving more than 100 people. It's hard to do Agile with 500 developers. A lot of the things that it requires favor small teams. It just seems natural. It's hard to get a crowd of 500 people to move together. It's easy to get a crowd of 10 to move together. I mean, if you just think how Agile. Engineering approach is when there's a fixed price and a fixed scope and it's contracted, might make a little more sense. And that's where the cloud, usually there's not a fixed price or a fixed scope. It's just, it runs until the company closes down. I mean, cloud-based products basically go on forever until the business behind them fails or they get sold to someone else and get closed down, right? I mean, there's no logical end to most of them. So here's just a table from the book. Size, better for small teams for Agile. How critical is the software? So engineering base is still better, like I said, for a rocket. Probably for a radiation machine, though, because you're not going to kind of test it on users and hope it works right and then fix it. Although that's what happened in that case. They didn't even fix it, though. How dynamic is the project? How quick are things changing? What's the personnel? And then the culture. What's that?
I said, you have the 10 views.
Oh, nice. On this one?
No.
It's going viral.
So
It's on its way.
It'll be there in 3 years.
the culture, so thrives in a culture where people feel comfortable and empowered by having many degrees of freedom. I mean, a lot of that is like in Google and Facebook, they encourage that culture, right? Like Google has their 20% rule, and those kind of things. No? You never heard of that?
No idea what that is.
They can spend 20% of their time working on whatever side projects they want to work on.
Oh.
That's where like all those labs and things in Gmail come from. Those are usually things people created during their 20% that then got integrated. So it's kind of like one day a week, you sort of have more freedom to break out and work on other things that interest you. So it used to be really pitched at Google, like you heard about it all the time. I mean, they still do it as far as I know, but I don't hear it touted as much as it used to be. But that's why a lot of these places now, we're going away from the cubicle, and we have these nice open spaces with couches, and it's easier to be agile and do these techniques when you have more of that freedom and
You're
that
not stuck in a cube.
collaborative environment. So, the engineering thrives in a culture where people feel comfortable and empowered by having their roles defined by clear practices and procedures. I mean,
I
that
still want to know when we're going to hold class out in the like in the grass. I mean, they show that in the brochure.
It's like Valve.
it's true.
All the desks there have like big old wheels on them and stuff because you can roll your desk wherever
Oh,
you
that's
want
cool,
and
yeah.
change
That makes
the
sense.
whole place every day. And
In the bathroom.
like a friend of mine, he knows one of the guys that works out there, and they say oh, we got a meeting today, and everyone just rolls their desk down the
That's
hall and
funny.
puts all their stuff together and just feels
So
like
you got the one guy who's got the electric desk.
yeah.
Nice.
Well, I guess they don't have like conference rooms or anything. They just
Yeah, they just kind of
Yeah.
mob up.
So.
So we're going to look at extreme programming as a specific example. As we move forward, I'll talk about Scrum, Kanban. We're going to do for our project Agile, even though we spent most of the semester learning about an engineering-based approach. You're a one-person team. 2, if you count me, as like a contributor.
Okay, I want the GUI on my desk by Monday.
Yeah. That's actually another reason why I'm going to force you to use GitHub for your source control, because you can also add me to that. And then when you say my code won't work, it's not that, well, email it to me and I'll test it. I can just like pull it straight down, test it, make a little fix and put it right back in, and you have it.
So what I can do is just send you and be like, I wanted to do this, and then when I come back tomorrow, it'll be done.
No, not quite that level.
Yeah,
But
that part's gonna work, but the rest of it won't.
It's trash, but
I haven't decided. Kanban, Scrum, whatever tool I choose will kind of nudge us that way. And we won't go fully down the rabbit hole on any of these, of course, with our limited time, but I'll talk whatever I choose to go with for the project. I'll do a little mini lecture about Kanban. Of course, I'm not going to say, well, we're using Kanban, go.
you
So-
are really hitting on the whole Disney thing now. Like too far down the rabbit hole and mini and like
I've
you're
been
not going there yet.
I've been
Calm down.
inoculated by my wife after all these years. So extreme is one example, distinguished by short development cycles. I mean, all the Agile kind of have that. Incremental planning approach, so you're planning as you go. That kind of makes sense for our project, like it's great to be able to nail down all the requirements, but sometimes you don't know them until you made like half of it, and you're like, well, now I needed to do this. So that's sort of where that incremental focus is on automated tests, so that was the unit testing I talked about. Can you build in tests so that every time you push your code out, it's tested, at least at that unit level? Evolutionary approach, so that's kind of that adaptive idea. Extreme, what defines it mostly is this idea of pair programming. You guys won't do that because you don't have a pair, but the idea is that you sit 2 to a computer, and it'll come up on the next, I think a later slide breaks this down.
You want to sit on my lap?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
The two-person
Always, come here.
the two-person programming team and the customer on site, I'd say those are kind of the differentiating things. Like, you ideally just go into the customer's business and develop it like there. And sometimes the pair programming is you're paired with the user. Because then they can just be like, yeah, I should do this, and then the coder's doing it. Now, how do you get a business to give up users to sit and not work? And there's issues there, obviously, but
It doesn't sound like an issue if you're one of the people.
so going through design requirements, implementation, etc. So design, planning, design, analysis, and construction are kind of fused all into one phase. System requires are captured and presented in a unique way. Programmers who write code also write the tests. So this is sort of a good software engineering practice. If you're going to write a method, you write the test for the method as you write the method, and then it's just sort of done. Like, it's not going back and adding all the tests. You do it as you go. Pair programming. So 2 people work together. You code and test as you go. And why would we do this? More communication. Higher levels of productivity. It seems like the output will be less because you have 2 people instead of working on separate things, working on the same. But the reality is, and has been verified by some analyses, that the code that's produced by the 2 people together is of such higher quality and much more accurate that the overall productivity is higher than if they worked separately. The code is better, which helps maintenance and everything else down the road. And then my code a little, test a lot that I always talk about, that sort of gets nurtured by this pair programming. I've done pair programming during 2 phases of my business. Right when we started the company, my business partner, who was more of the sales and running the business, there wasn't that much to do because we didn't have a product. So we pair programmed. It worked pretty well, I thought, at that point. At the very end of my time with the software company, right before I left, he wanted to get more involved with the coding since I was leaving. So we went through a phase of pair programming. Basically, he moved the mouse and the keyboard, and I told him what to do with it. And that's really, I spent several months doing that, of like, well, you need to go here. It's just, I don't think he was learning much because he was just basically my puppet to control the computer while I told him what to do. So it depends. It's best if you're sort of, well, the better coder should be the one using the computer, ideally, because the other person can offer a lot, but, of outside input on things. It's nice if both people are sort of at the same experience level within the code. I don't have a ton of experience other than those maybe 2 or 3 months at the beginning and 2 or 3 months at the end of my time.
The end of your time.
Yeah. So requirements determination. So that was design. Continual user involvement. So the way you traditionally do it with Extreme, you get the users in early. User signs off at the end. Wait a second. I did this totally wrong. How did I?
Feedback. It'll take Facebook when you scroll past it really fast.
Yeah, this is, I totally said, not the traditional Extreme programming approach, the traditional engineering approach, like we talked about in the early. Users, you talk to them, you gather the requirements. At the end, they sign off. This is the Windows 8 model. The users didn't sign off, right? Things probably changed during that process, but the system didn't adapt within the middle.
I wonder what the original overlook of Windows 8 looked like.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like when they were first writing it.
Wait about 10 years, they'll put out the source code like
Yeah.
they did at XP in 98,
Yeah.
95, and all that.
So this, why I got thrown off, this is supposed to be the first one on the next slide, I think. That the iterative process fits with this. I kind of messed up my bullets. So agile usage-centered design, so 8 steps. We'll look at this next table. The most important ones in there is eventing session. Use of 3x5 cards. So this sort of it overlaps a lot with Kanban. If you look at a picture of Kanban, there's like a board with all these index cards on it. So here's the full list here.
That is quite the table.
Yeah, gather a group of people and sequester them in a room. Have a facilitator. You let everyone vent about the current system and what they want the new system. It's like a brainstorming.
Just
Determine
lock
the
'em into a
roles.
room.
Yeah, determine the roles and then put them on the cards.
Until we have software.
Yeah. And then you sort those cards so they're kind of the similar roles. And there you can buy Kanban cards and these kind of cards, or print them out online. There's tons of templates for them. You order the cards. You put the tasks on the card. You clump them on the table. Write a description. You treat each clump as a tentative set of tasks for the user interface, and then you assign, those to the different people involved. So I've never done it that way. It actually sounds awesome, and I think it would work a lot better than what I did a lot of times.
Kanban, and the first 5 suggestions that came up were cannabis.
It's Kanban with a K.
Type in
There you go.
the crystal family methodology. Type in that. I want to see what that is.
So the idea of this is that we have this, they call this the planning game. So you have players, which are the business, which are the customers, and then you have the development staff. The game pieces are the story cards. So that's those index cards you've made. They're created by the business, because in that sequestered room, you had a bunch of people from the business, the users in there. Those game pieces tell the feature or story. You date them and number them. So then we go through 3 phases with these cards. First is exploration. So you have this story on the card. That's press that page up. I know. I shouldn't even brought that up, but I just saw when I looked up at the crystal, he's the one that did the crystal methodology. It just made me laugh. And I had heard that name a lot before. It just said I had forgotten about him.
I think his parents were in crystal meth and they named him that.
So exploration, you take the card, development looks at it, says how long they think it'll take. So the business is going to sort those cards into which are the most important, less important, and then what are the nice to haves. And then development sorts the cards according to risk, because some things that are essential might be super hard to do and they're high risk because they might fail, but also it can go the other way. Sometimes those essential things are pretty easy. Users need to be able to log into a website. That's pretty easy, but it's very essential. So the sorting order is likely going to be different between the two, between the business and the development. So business selects the cards for the next release. So we've got the different sortings, but they're going to say, well, these are the ones that we, because we've got 3 stacks here, then development sorts those 3 stacks based on risk, business chooses. So then steering, so this is as it's moving forward. Business is seeing how development is progressing and plan is adjusted. You'd have a meeting or something like every 3 weeks or maybe a little bit more, but and hopefully you have stuff to show them. That's where it's continual involvement of the users in the business. Now again, I mean, cloud-based, a lot of times you're not developing for one client. So you're going to do something similar to this, but it's less specific. Your users are like a wide pool, not just from one source. So the iteration planning game, so this was the design planning game, the iteration. So after the planning game, this is only played by the programmers. And they use this terminology like it's a game. I mean, that's just how they do it. So that early part is played by the customers and the developers. The iteration game is played only by programmers.
They were trying to make it not sound so nerdy.
Right.
But they made it worse.
So those last cards were story cards. New cards are task cards.
Do they give it to the task card master?
It's Scrum that has a Scrum Master.
Oh.
Yeah, Scrum Master. Yeah. So these, they can't come up with some interesting.
Randomly seeded generated number between.
They're pushing way away from engineering, right? It's like, let's do it totally different.
Like Scrum, that everything is a story, and
it's a user story, and then you have a sprint, which is all the tasks to accomplish that user story. And the Scrum Master is the one that kind of manages.
They're not really helping.
There's a fairly good chance we're going to do Scrum, because Scrum is kind of the simplest.
Oh yeah, it's real easy, but I'm saying like
really,
the labeling of what they call things.
Yeah,
not
what I do with the kids in high school is they work in pairs, but they do a scrum. They plan the user stories. A user should be able to, you always start it with that, and then you say, log into the website. Then you take that story, which is kind of like this, right? I mean, they're calling them stories, business stories. You break that into all the steps you would need to do that. That's like your tasks. The sprint is the 2-week period you would do to do those tasks. So iteration planning, you have the same 3 phases. Programmers convert the story cards to task cards. That's like Scrum, the user story, to the sprint task list. There's a lot of overlap with these. Commitment, you assign that out to the programmers. You balance workloads. If someone gets done faster, the task cards might be passed around. You write code and test, you integrate in the product. So, did I screw up my bullets again? Takes place. No, it's fine. You've got the design, then you've got the iteration planning game, which takes place between the steering phase meetings of the planning game. So the steering meetings happened every 3 weeks. That's the big game. Within it, there's the mini games that take 3 weeks that are taking place in between those meetings. So you have mini games within your main game.
So do I need to bring shorts and a towel?
So
Please don't.
2 techniques in terms of the design that Extreme uses is, the idea is it should be simple. And we've seen, like, the internet has kind of cycled through these phases. It was pretty simple. Then they're like, oh, we have cool technologies and we can do Flash and make it awful. And that kind of came, and now we're sort of back to a minimalist design, right? Most stuff, though I have seen a recent trend now that you can have like sites where as you're scrolling through the page, it's like live video kind of just embedded in it. It's all like, we're starting, it's like people's new toy. So we're starting to see it a little
Remember what
less
MySpace
simple.
started to look like right at the end?
Yeah.
That was obnoxious. And then Facebook came out. It was just like so clear.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't do all the cool stuff, but that's why they killed MySpace.
So the design, simple design, you know, you can only make it so simple. It has to still be able to do these. It must communicate everything it needs to communicate. That's kind of obvious. Inside, you don't want duplicate code. So this is more of like a software engineering thing. Like, you don't want that duplicate code. If you can have less classes and less methods, it's easier. You know, sometimes more classes is better though, like, because each class should have a specific role.
Main menu.
And if you just say like, here's a class that's like a thing, and then everything is part, that would be counterintuitive, but you'd have less classes. So
Classes with interrelated methods.
yeah, I mean, there's layers to this. The second technique is refactoring. Have I talked about refactoring in here? I think I talked about it with the high school kids. So the idea is that you develop it, but then you don't just say, okay, that's done. You go back and improve that code. You simplify it. I did this a lot in Orbital Shift. I'd get something working and shipped to the customers, but I'd know it needed to be better. So I'd go back and it wouldn't change really from their view. It would just be, I'd make the code cleaner and better. I'd simplify it. It's hard though when you're always getting pulled, oh, you need to do this new feature. So some stuff that never happened. There are refactoring tools in the more featured IDEs, like Visual Studio, where you can do things. There's a ton of tools to help you. The simplest is, say you want to rename a variable name or a method. Orbital Shift, we probably had 30, 40, 50 files, I don't know, tens of thousands of line of code. If I wanted to rename a method, I'd have 2 choices. Use, find, and replace, but that can cause a ton of problems. Or you can use refactoring, and basically you right-click and you say refactor, and it's smart enough to know everywhere that's called to go through and rename it. Same with variable names, and that's kind of the simple. There's a lot more complicated things with refactoring that those tools can.
There's that in Eclipse now. Don't use it in Eclipse.
Is it not good?
Oh, it's terrible.
No.
Yeah, it screws so many things
Okay.
up. Like
The Visual Studio one it's awesome. It
Yeah.
works really well.
What were you refactoring?
I don't remember, but we were doing something in Java that we were using that, and this is over at the other campus, and we did something, and it screwed up so many things, and we finally ended up just like undo, you know, like just quit doing shit. You
If
know,
it
we'll just go
works
through
good,
it, like,
it's
yeah.
awesome. I mean,
Doesn't work too bad.
replace all
Yeah.
causes a lot of trouble when people try to do that because that'll replace things in comments. That'll
Any instant
replace all sorts of things that you might not have wanted replaced, depending.
I did that with your PHP code, and it took me longer.
Well, and what if you have two classes in different files that happen to have the same method name? Replace all is going to change them all. Refactoring is smart enough to know these are connected currently to this. These are the places that need to change. So implementation in Extreme. So traditional systems development involves an implementation phase. So you specifically do all the requirements, all the design. Now let's implement it. Agile is more, it's not a specific phase. Once you've tested something and it works, that implementation is done, that portion of it. You put it out. So Damon sent me this, and you can only zoom in so far. The best way to actually view this would be to, and I should have just posted it probably right on here, is to save this as an image. Damon sent me this a couple of weeks ago, and it's kind of an interesting way to look at, because here we can zoom in a lot further and it's high enough resolution. Well, it was before I put it in the PowerPoint. It shrunk it down. So the top, it says software development explained with cars, and I can send the link out to where this came from. So at the top, we have the waterfall method. So unfortunately, you can't read all these little things. But waterfall is more of the traditional process. It's more linear production flow. The car is designed, it flows through, it's sold to a person, right? Like, do you have any say on the car that's designed until you see it on the lot? I mean, that's a perfect example of a waterfall. That's how Windows, even older than Windows 8, Windows XP, there was no insider program back then. There was internal testing. Moving into Agile, it says transparency is key. And so you got these people that are seeing into the process, and it's more collaborative, small incremental changes, adapting to changing circumstances.
We just did that with the high schoolers that walked in.
Yeah. Here you have the Kanban, and you have the Kanban sensei, and it's make sure the team follows the to-do list. So Kanban has a sensei. Here's the to-do list on the wall. And then down here, here's the scrum. Here's the scrum master. So he protects the team's time at any cost. So he's got this spear. And here, these little battle arena is like the sprints. And then at the bottom is lean. So designed for fast delivery and minimal waste. It's super high res when you look at the original picture, and you can actually PowerPoint's dumb. It only lets you zoom in that far. But anyway, if you can Google this and take a look at the real image, it's pretty interesting kind of way to compare this. So summary, and then I'm going to real quick pull up a couple of those links just to peek at, and then we'll get out of here. So we've had this trend towards Agile, and then we talked about extreme programming. Uses pair programming. It goes through this planning game. That's kind of the key part of it. Later, links I posted. I was gonna see. No one's watching right now, so. Difference between waterfall, scrum, and lean. I I would recommend you read through this, but if we just kind of glance, waterfall, plan, build, test, review, deploy. That's sort of what we talked about all semester. A refinement was the iterative waterfall, plan, build, test, deploy, plan, build, test, deploy. You kind of keep doing that. Scrum would look more like this. Plan, build, test, review, plan, build, test, review. You got all these little smaller ones you review and you deploy. So it's breaking it down even more. It focus on delivering fully tested, independent, valuable, small features. And then lean is basically just kind of the full extent, but you're releasing like every small feature as you go. So that's one link.
Hey,
So that-
you have copy and paste.
That would be more of like a.
I mean,
that'd be more of like building an app for the App Store or something. Like you got the product, you put it out on the App Store, and then you do little updates and update it again.
This is basically what we did in Orbital Shift. Like it says, you select, plan, develop, test, and deploy one feature before you select, plan, develop, test, and deploy the next feature. We did a lot of that. Do a feature, release it.
Yeah.
Now, we usually had it planned ahead. It's not like we had no idea what the next one is. We kind of knew, well, when this is done, we're going to do this. But we did them independently so you could get them out. So, I mean, this is pretty much what we did. But yeah, you're right. Like when you see apps and you're getting updates all the time, that's sort of what they're doing with this. Waterfall versus agile versus lean explained in one picture. So the line's the build, the release is the dot, and the star is customer or market feedback. They're replacing it. Waterfall,
Courses are all
agile,
symbols for that.
lean. I mean, here it says wipes tears. Isn't it beautiful? But I mean that this really accurately sums up like these more complicated things. The difference here is that the agile, it's not being released till the end, whereas the lean is multiple releases. In the agile, and they're specifically saying Scrum is the agile, lean is the form of agile as well, but you would still have the users involved here. That's what those meetings would be with Extreme, but you wouldn't necessarily like fully release that. And then this is a slideshow, a very graphical one that talks about Scrum, extreme programming, and Kanban. And I'm not going to go through this, but there's 38 slides in here, but it would be worth your time to kind of flip through. He does a very good job of laying out, you know, here's kind of when these came around, XP, who invented them. There's a timeline here of
Who invented XP?
Kent Beck.
Oh, I thought it said Ken Block. I was like,
Here's crystal clear.
yeah.
Probably puts my screen on.
So this just kind of shows the timeline. Waterfall's been around from the beginning. Spiral was a big one for a long time. And then Scrum, XP, they're stretching out like into the 90s, but even more recently. There was one graphic I really liked in here. Here they're explaining those three. The Kanban is Japanese. That's where it came from Toyota, is where Toyota did it for their manufacturing stuff. So, of course, it's
amazing how a lot of these car companies, especially the Japanese and the German car companies, have taken I don't know, it's kind of taken it to heart on like, you know, quality control, every part of the processes. Yeah. And ours, we've used it for one part of the process and have like neglected the rest of like quality control and all that stuff has just gone to hell.
Yeah, it looks good though.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you know.
So I liked this graphic. I don't know, you have to kind of spend a little, go through the slideshow and think about this a little bit to absorb it.
That's a great interface right there.
There's a lot of, you know, stuff
Very
on it. But
yeah, very straight.
I would
just follow the arrows.
in 20 minutes, you could go through that slide in pretty good, you know, read through it, spend some time, and you'd have a pretty good idea about those three Scrum, XP, and Kanban. We talked about XP already, but he goes, Kanban is what he kind of goes in on that slideshow. So I'll try to get the homework for, which will be
Oh, just take your time.
project proposal. And I mean, fair warning, I think you guys know this, but the workload will go up.
Well, yeah, but it's not homework per se of reading out of the book. I'd much rather work on
Yeah, it'll be
projects.
more fun and
Yeah.
something you want to
Instead
do.
of
But
going, what is our age?
yeah, I know. I hated to do that, but we had to do something, right? So we'll have more. I mean, you'll be working on the project, and that'll take some time. But I'll try to give you the direction so that we get to the end, and you're not like, oh crap, like I'm. Bye on YouTube.